And so it's really my pleasure to be here to ask some of these questions of the panel here. I think probably all of us that are watching this right now are really thinking about the journey that you went on, Michel, and how you ended up here today. And it's very exciting to be here for to celebrate during this special Gairdner week. But I think really kind of looking back, and that's one of the biggest questions. I know we were even speaking before the screening today, just about how it was that you were able to keep going despite all of the obstacles. And so when you kind of look back on the journey and where it's taken you, I mean, and you think about where we are sitting here today, what are some of the thoughts that come to your mind and how you were able to really see this through despite all of the obstacles?
Thank you for starting with one of the toughest questions. I think there are many researchers in the audience, and we all know that sometimes we have a great idea and we believe in it, we want to pursue it. And quite often, most research doesn't work right away. And at some point, you must face a decision of whether to just stop it. You have a career, you have an obligation of producing results. If you're heading the lab, your team needs papers, they need to graduate, they need promotions. But if you believe in your idea, you might still be creative and find ways to carry on. It's very risky. You could be digging your own grave, career-wise. Or you might sometimes succeed. So in this case, anyway, I believed in this approach. A few others did in the world. I'm not the only one. There were, as Carl said at some point in the documentary, a handful of us who did. And here we are.
Was there, I'll press a little bit more just for a moment before I move on to others, so apologies for picking on you. Was there a particular moment or sort of stage where you thought, I need to keep going, even though, things weren't working? Or, was there just a moment where you thought to yourself, this is going to work? Like you just knew?
No, I didn't know. But I thought it could. And I guess that was enough. Maybe that comes through in this story that you just saw. I don't know if you need some stubbornness genes or just have a cultural heritage of resilience. I can't say, but at no point did I think I would stop this. I had a chairman who really, personally, I think supported me and loved me very much. And he said, Michel, maybe you should stop working on this, And we couldn't get a grant. This was not viewed as serious science. And it's a bit embarrassing to me to say that it's philanthropy that kept this work alive until it gained enough respect to be on occasion favorably reviewed by our great agencies.
That's incredible. Well, and thank you for keeping going on that. And Camille, you're the natural sort of next person to speak to about this. As one of the people that we saw featured and whose life was, literally, you can't make an understatement of this, changed by, these and other discoveries. So, when you look and you sort of watch yourself on screen and you think about where this journey's taken you in the past few years, you and your family, what are some of the things that come to mind and that you want to share with the audience?
There's so much, so thank you everyone for being here, because everybody on this panel needs a lot of recognition because they have fought for this treatment, and I'm living proof that it works. I don't even remember what the question is, Carly. I just know that I want people to know that there's hope, and that just because something isn't working now, it doesn't mean that it's not going to work in the future. And we need people like Dr. Mattsson and a whole bunch of others that believe in these kind of things, and even if they're not available to patients yet, just to even utter those words that, hey, they're working on things out there. And that sparks interest in us patients that have been told that there's not many options out there for us. So my advice to everybody is, an idea can turn out to be so much more. And your will to fight and your will to survive will definitely get you through. So, I mean.
Thank you. That's really incredible. To Isabelle and Jonas, I mean, obviously you work in this field. You all work closely together. This is, it's really incredible. And the more I've kind of learned about, gene therapy, that's obviously a huge term for a lot, can mean a lot of different things. I think it's just truly something that, we need to be shouting from the rooftops every day, but when we look at the conversations we're having now, and I think this was stated in the film, a few years ago, people were saying this is impossible. And now I've talked to a number of people who work in this field, yourselves and others, who say, the speed with which things are coming online now is something we may not have even imagined like a handful of years ago, and just the potential for the future. And so we're having conversations now about things, and in some cases difficult things we never really thought we'd have to confront. So, this is amazing. Don't make a mistake about that, and there's so much hope. But I'm just wondering if you can reflect for a moment on some of the questions that we now have to wrestle with in terms of things like, access to treatment, even physical access for patients that may not live near a large center that's doing some of this work, cost barriers, manufacturing challenges, and so how we start to have those conversations in the context of so much excitement. And maybe Isabelle, I'll start with you, and then Jonas, you can finish us off.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So today we are working on the next steps to try to support the access to more patients. And so some of the approaches are, in the film we mentioned that manufacturing lasts for 10 days. Now we can do the manufacturing between 1 and 3 days, so that can help reduce the cost by having obviously less labor, less cost of goods. That's one approach that we're taking for the approaches where we take the blood of the patient and give it back. We are also working on alternative approaches, taking the blood of healthy donors, and engineering the chimeric antigen receptor into the healthy donors. So from a healthy donor, we can get a lot more cells, and we can also use immune cells derived from induced pluripotent stem cells, which are these artificial stem cells that have a longer life and that can be expanded at large numbers. So therefore, we can make multiple doses. Then obviously there's all the logistics about the distribution and the access, like you say, to hospitals where there is not an easy access for the patient. And I think there we need to continue to evolve the models. This is not trivial. We could see already when we had COVID vaccines that it was difficult to have a vaccine in a freezer in places which did not have necessarily access to this simple type of equipment. So I think there is other approaches that we're working towards, like in vivo delivery, where you would just really give the virus or the vector directly with the CAR instead of having the cells, and so that the vector could reach the cells directly in vivo. So these are the type of approaches that we are looking at, and obviously we need also different models to provide cheaper drugs and different ways of commercializing and developing maybe at some centers, regional centers. But I'll leave my colleague to continue on this topic.
Well, I think, it's one important thing, and I think that was pretty clear in the film, that I think everyone realizes, and I know Camille pretty well now, so we can be very honest, and Camille shouldn't be sitting here, and I think that is really important to notice, and that's how you start with any kind of new therapy, that you start with patients that have absolutely no chance whatsoever, and then you go for treatment, and and it's just amazing to see how this field moved this fast. It's from being that experimental therapy and just patients like Camille, and now it's moving up the ladder, and it's not fourth line therapy. It's became third line, and now it's second, and it's going to challenge a lot of things that we are doing, and clinically that is a positive thing, but it's creating a lot of questions to us. working here, so, it's, as I pointed out in that film, so let's say that we have a patient who went through this therapy, okay, now what? Should we do something else, additional therapies, or is the patient really cured? And, it's you get a lot of questions. So I think that is one thing that you see this enormous expansion, and it's also thanks to the pharma, that stepped in here and really was able to expand it worldwide. So it didn't just stick to some academic super institutions. But now I think, for the next steps, the big elephant is, of course, solid tumors. And Michel and I have done some interesting work on ovarian cancer, so we know it can, in animal models, you can actually cure advanced ovarian cancer. But I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. But it looks really interesting now with the autoimmune diseases, and that's going to be a big thing, and it's just exploding in the US, and it's going to be so many trials going on, and of course this will put a strain on the resources that we have. And I'm Swedish, but Sweden and Canada, there's a lot of similarities. It's relatively little population compared to the size of the nation, so that is another problem that you were alluding to. When how we can help patients also when they're not living in Toronto or Montreal, or so there's a lot of things happening, but there's a lot of positive questions remaining.
Yeah, and good questions to be asking. And Camille, I would love to hear your thoughts on some of that and some of those challenges we need to face in order to embrace all of the possibilities that lay ahead.
Yeah, so I was very lucky in this. I know it's funny for me to say I was very lucky, but first of all, I'm not sure if many of you know, I did the first made in Canada CAR T cell, that Dr. Kekri in Ottawa had started, and she believed that I was, somebody that would be willing to go through what I went through. And to add to getting it to across Canada, I've had the honor of seeing some of these machines that they've now made that are going to be able to be put in hospitals where your cells don't have to be sent away to another province, that they can be done in the hospital that you're actually at. Now, whether this stuff is I don't know how long this stuff takes, but as an outsider looking in, the stuff that I'm seeing and how fast, like Dr. Jonas said, that it's crazy how fast. When he told me about it, that was 4 years ago. So in 4 years, we went from there's nothing for me to I'm 3 years now cancer-free. So, I mean, I was lucky I had family that lived in Ottawa. So again, me getting into that trial was really luck because there were so many barriers for me. I was too sick. I didn't have anyone to take care of me in Ottawa. But it just so happened I had a family member who was an RN in that ER. And because of me knowing her, that helped them make the decision that, listen, she might have a shot. She's got support here. She's got, a team of people that are rooting for her. And even though I was without family and friends, except for those few, that really kept me going. Everyone really, I believed in CAR T. As soon as I that moment that Dr. Jonas told me about it, I was like, whatever, I'm gonna beat this. I'm not gonna need that. But literally when my doctor, Dr. Minden, I know him and I had refused the hyper-CVAD that I was offered when my cancer had relapsed. And I decided to refuse it because when I heard the names in that protocol, they were very familiar to the Dana-Farber protocol that I had done in the beginning of my treatment, and it didn't work for me. So I knew at that moment I wasn't gonna make it if I didn't have support in that hospital. I was in the middle of a pandemic, no family, no friends. So I told Dr. Min, I said, no, I'm not doing it. I will not do that. And that kind of, I think, opened up a door to explore other options. But in that very little time, Dr. Minden had to keep me alive. So we faced a lot of barriers. I was denied medications that I had tried, blinatumomab, that had worked for me. The pharmaceutical refused to fund it again for me. We discharged me from a hospital, even though I shouldn't have been discharged from a hospital, to get approved for inotuzumab. That really gave me the time to get back to Ottawa Then the cancer went into my central nervous system, sent back again to Princess Margaret, told that, I don't have a chance. And I said, well, find that nurse that was able to do those lumbar punctures, because I'm not getting back to Ottawa. I am going to get back there. And we cleared up that cancer in the CNS and got back to Ottawa, and they said, no, we can't do it. You're too sick. And then Dr. Kekri and her team, I'm pretty sure Dr. Kekri really fought for me, because she told me that none of them wanted to go ahead with this trial for me, and that she told them that, listen, she's here, she's come back 3 times. Let's give her a shot. And now here I am. So thank you to everyone who's believed in this. And I just want to, sorry, I know it's not appropriate, but I just want to thank my daughter, and because she gave me the will to live. And even like every hospital, this isn't just one person that put this all together. This was a team of people that believed in something, that every hospital, whether they're on each other's team or not, they all know, bottom line, this is what you guys are supposed to be doing, and keep doing it. And you guys are on the right track, and nobody hears it enough that you guys are doing a great job, and that it's working, whether you see it or not. There was so much I didn't know about till even this week. So there's lots of stuff that's going on in the background.
Thank you so much. And those reflections, I mean, that's really what all of this is about, right? What at the end of the day, what we're all here to kind of celebrate is the life-changing impact that these discoveries have. So it's just truly amazing. And I want to just point out that we have one of the filmmakers who's joined us on stage. So I was wondering if, perhaps you could maybe introduce yourself for the audience and just, share some thoughts of yours on what sort of drove you, you and your team to tell this story, and, to really bring it to the world. And I thank you for doing so.
Thank you. My name is Victorina Petrosyan, and I'm a producer of this movie. We've been working for 6 years to film all the people and scientists and Michel and Isabelle, and I'm very, very proud that we did it, that we have this time together. And we're not the scientists, we're not the biologists and engineers, and I think that's a great mission, to tell the world about this great discovery and about these great people, and to help somehow in our way to your research and to your future work. And I'm very grateful to Camille, who was so brave, and to tell the story in the front of the camera about the very difficult and emotional time of her life. It was a very nice time, and I hope in the future our film will help somehow to your research and to tell the people, because as everybody's saying today, not too many people knows about it. And when you're sick and you're trying to find a cure, so you're probably in a panic stage, and somehow people should know about this. And as Isabelle said, now it's like the shorter period of time in a laboratory, when you can produce this T cells. So maybe it helps somehow the people all over the world. What can be bigger goal in life to save the people's life?
Thank you very much. Isabelle.
And I think it's important also for students and to understand that they should pursue their research as long as they think it's scientifically sound, and that they should not let themselves discouraged necessarily by obstacles of, peers and reviewers and who do not believe in their science. I mean, against the science, and the rigorous science is important, because that's the key. You always have to have that soundboard, but not to get discouraged by new ideas, and sometimes not necessarily pursuing what's mainstream.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a really good point to remember, and for everyone out there, it's a really powerful message. We're going to be, this is a message of hope and excitement, but before we just veer into that, I wanted just to ask Camille one more question, something that she didn't touch on that I think is just sort of one of the remaining barriers for patients that we should, just talk about publicly while we have the opportunity, and that's, the opportunity that other patients may have or may not have right now in places like Canada to get access to some of these drugs. And I know that you have some thoughts on that, Camille, and I thought you might just want to share those with us.
Well, I'm having a hard time with it, to be honest, because right now, anyone in the situation I was in 3 years ago, there's no options right now in Canada that I know of, unless it's I did hear something recently that Princess Margaret is starting for leukemias. I don't know if is that true that no. So not yet, but maybe soon we will have trials here. But yeah, it's very frustrating because, then there comes in the survivor's guilt. I know something works, and now it's not available to people in my situation. So now I know what some of these doctors were going through when it was, at one point it's been available, sick kids for children or people under 25. But how hard it must be for a doctor to tell somebody or one of their patients, hey, there's something for people a year younger than you, 5 years younger than you, but sorry, you're too old. So now that they've expanded this to older people and to leukemia, it's really frustrating for me. And but I'm doing as much as I can now to bring awareness. And I work with BioCan RX, and the CEO Stephanie Michaud is here, and they're doing such a great job of this network of networks working together and funding research and just supporting everybody that's working on these kind of things, and not just to work on it where we're taking these things to other countries. We're in Canada, and there's no reason why people are leaving Canada to go bring these things to the States when we can have it here too, Dr. Sadelain, Dr. Riviere worked on this product. I don't think they're gatekeeping it for themselves. I think they want everybody to be able to have access. So I don't know what the answer is to that other than we're working on it. I will use my voice as much as humanly possible to get this to other patients. I mean, I'll scream from the rooftops if I have to. They're working on it.
Thank you for sharing that perspective, because it is important, we have to have a lot of these conversations really urgently, so thank you for sharing that. We had heard in the film, about how there's so many different applications that are being looked at, and kind of, how we're really on the cusp of a lot of new discoveries and, life-changing treatments for other things. And I thought it might be just really, really, fun and inspiring to ask each of you as the sort of researcher clinicians on the panel to reflect on where you think we are realistically headed. I mean, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of hope. Where do you think this is going to lead us in the near term, in the long term? I mean, what is the potential here? Is there a limit? Jonas, I'll start off with you.
Well, no, I don't think there is a limit. I think, this will just keep on expanding. I mean, now as that was, mentioned in the film with the autoimmune disorders, I think that's going to be a big thing for sure. I really think that's close to my heart, with the solid tumors. I think that needs to happen something there, and I'm pretty sure it will, at least for some of the solid tumor patients. But it's also another thing that is important, and that is that, pharma, they will be, focusing on large patient groups, but we also have, particularly for pediatric patients, there are several diseases there. It's going to be relatively few patients, and there won't be any pharma-sponsored trials for those diseases where, CAR T-cells could probably cure many of those patients. So I think there needs to be an effort, from the federal level and through academia to find ways to also support these patients, because pharma will not be able to support everything. So I don't think there is, I think there will be look here, there are ideas that you can use, and also studies actually showing that CAR T-cells could work for Alzheimer. So there you go. I think it can be used for many interesting diseases and change the scope of medicine.
Thank you for that. We have about 2 minutes left, so Michel, I'll ask you your reflections.
Well, I think the story of this CD19 CAR T cell has an impact on different levels. As Camille said, it offers hope to patients with lymphomas, leukemias, refractory diseases. There are today some CAR T cells that are approved for multiple myeloma. It's a first insofar that it's the first drug that is a human T cell, and it's a genetically reprogrammed, rewired cell that is the medicine, so that's a first in that regards. It's also the first cell therapy that enticed the pharmaceutical industry to get into the business of making cells. There were cell therapies before, but none of them really had attracted industry to do that, to take over this, or to take on this challenge of producing cells rather than just chemicals or proteins. So I think that's certainly wonderful. And then, as you said, now it opens all kinds of possibilities. In cancer, as Jonas said, solid tumors are still a challenge, but I think that many of the barriers have been identified, perhaps not all of them, but many of them. And right now it's really a systematic effort of creativity and engineering to adapt these CAR T cells for these different solid tumors. We heard about the autoimmune diseases, and what's remarkable about that is that it's the same CD19 CAR T cell that's produced for lymphomas and leukemias. The same everything. It didn't need additional research, actually. It's exactly the same recipe, the same CARs, and they work for at least a small number of patients with systemic lupus. And as Jonas said, there's a flurry of trials now opening in the US and in China and some in Europe. Beyond autoimmune diseases, there are neurological disorders. Multiple sclerosis seems to be like a disease that could be amenable to be controlled, maybe cured, I don't know, but at least controlled with cell therapy. And there are even those who think that engineered cells, not necessarily T cells, but macrophage could be helpful in diseases such as Parkinson's disease or Alzheimer's. In the context of transplantation too, for acute graft rejection or also chronic graft rejection, there are ways of engineering regulatory T cells that may abate, graft rejection, which if they were to succeed, that's not the case yet, would obviate the need for, threatening immunosuppressive therapies that put these patients at risk today. So I don't know if it's infinite, as Jonas said, but this seems to have opened a path for really unleashing, a lot of imagination in many areas of medicine.
This is truly exciting. Thank you so much. We're officially at time, but I just wanted to thank everyone on the panel for being here, for contributing, and congratulations again on this award, Michel.
Thank you.